our coat. Julie Bitzer is in here somewhere. Oh, there she is. She needs a box. And Kathy Bobacker, president. Okay, I guess that's it for that. Welcome to the Resident Association's 2020 Board of Directors Candidates Forum. I'm Ed Abbott, chairman of the Resident Association's Election Committee, and one of the moderators for this evening's forum. Thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you to those who are watching online. This month, the membership of RA will elect 4 Resident Association board members, 1 at-large director for a 3-year term, 1 at-large director for a 1-year term, 1 Class B apartment owners director for a 3-year term, and 1 Hunters Woods Dogwood district director for a 3-year term. RA is a non-stock Virginia corporation which requires a board of directors. The membership elects the board. As such, the board is responsible to the membership for setting policy, evaluating the CEO, and approving the budget. Additional duties and responsibilities are included in the governing documents, which I'm sure everybody here has read at one time. The membership looks to the board to implement those duties and responsibilities in a manner that is consistent with the board's or the residents' founding principles. Currently, those principles are being challenged with rapid growth and development. For those candidates that are elected, this will not be easy. For those that are not elected, my hope is that you'll continue to contribute to this community and support the board moving Resident forward during these challenging times. The governing documents require the membership to vote for the board of directors in a referendum. That means you, the members, cast your vote either online or by mail. Please remember that a quorum of 10% of the membership is required for the 4 races for the election to be valid. This evening, we'll have an opportunity to learn about each of the candidates' positions and various issues of importance to our community. There are several ways to ask candidates about these issues that matter most to you. On your seat, you were provided with a form to pose a written question to the candidates. Members of the Elections Committee and the staff will be collecting those questions from the audience throughout the evening and grouping them by theme. We'll also be taking live questions from the podium on my right. Let's begin with opening remarks. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make an opening remark. Once each candidate has made his or her opening remarks, we'll begin with the question and answer portion of the evening. We'll go from left to right.
Good evening. It's great to see so many people in this room. That's unusual for a candidate forum. I'm Caren Anton, and I am running for re-election for the Hunters Woods Dogwood district seat, a 3-year term. I thought long and hard about running for re-election. It's a lot of work, takes a lot of time if you're really committed. Frankly, the pay's not so good. That was a joke for those of you out there who don't know. We are volunteers. But I am as passionate today as I was 2 years ago when I first went on the board about advocating for the Hunters Woods Dogwood district and the members in all of Reston. That hasn't gone away. A lot of progress was made over these past 2 years to accomplish that goal of mine, but there's still a lot of work to do, so I want to continue. Another factor in my decision was turnover on the board. There is potentially a turnover of 4 out of 9 board members, which is not good for the association. We need consistency. So that's why I'm here. I'm fortunate once again to be running unopposed. I want to believe that that's because people feel I'm doing a very good job and want me to continue. I hope that's the reason. I hope it's not apathy in the district, but I may be able to talk a little more about that later on. So thank you for being here. And as you may or may not know, even though I'm unopposed, I need quorum, which is 10% of the eligible voters in Hunters Woods Dogwood district. So if you live in that district or have friends in that district, please encourage them to support me, and I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Berry, and I'm excited to be your at-large candidate. My first job in high school was as a lifeguard, then as a camp counselor. Now I'm a tech industry executive, and last year Governor Northam made me an appointee to advise him on policy and budget matters. In that role, I help shape outcomes in communities all over Virginia, including here in Reston. I'm seeking your vote and support because I believe in this connection, the one between the neighborhood and decision makers that execute strategy on their behalf. The Reston Association Board of Directors is all volunteer, and I can't think of a better way to continue my service to the Commonwealth than doing so right here in my own community. I want to accomplish 3 things with your support. First, evaluating all the new WebTrack data. As a tech industry executive, it's my job to take new resources, like this website, and improve service while reducing cost. Second, I want to increase the communication between the at-large director and each cluster. I'm proud to say that just a few minutes ago, I launched a free tool available to anyone in Reston Association to communicate their most important issues directly with me as a candidate. If you go to electberry.com, you will find it right now, awaiting your questions and concerns. If I'm elected, I want to use this cost-neutral platform to classify and prioritize concerns that individuals have. It should not replace the cluster structure, which is key to making decisions for each part of RA. But I do think that the at-large director should live up to the name and be omnipresent, if not physically, then virtually, and accessible to everybody. The third thing that I'd like to accomplish is addressing ongoing concerns and oversight issues that impact Reston as a planned community. Just like we have, and I hope will have, strong internal communication structures, I want the at-large director to communicate externally that which we feel is most critical to maintaining a diverse and welcoming community in the spirit of Bob's vision. I've managed budgets as big as $16 million for large for-profit and nonprofit entities, and as small as a few $100s for local neighborhood NGOs. The most important thing a director can do is be a responsible steward of our resources and ensure those resources are effectively allocated. Thank you to everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to the staff for putting on the forum. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I'm Kerri Bouie. I'm a 3-year at-large candidate. I grew up in Reston, so this is my hometown. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. I went to Lake Ann Elementary School, Langston Hughes Middle School, went to Paul VI High School. I mean, everything about Reston really made me who I am today. The development of North Reston is actually how I got involved in my career now. I'm an interior architect, and so I hope to use those skills to most closely relate like the design review board and the other entities that help RA with the kind of cluster and community growth, as well as development in the area. I am not really good at talking about myself, but the truth is this has nothing to do with me. I don't see representation and haven't seen representation of people my age, especially kids that grew up here. And so that's why I'm volunteering my time to be a part of something greater and giving back to the community.
Hi, I'm Bob Petrine. I've lived in Reston for more than 44 years and have been a financial professional who retired from the Federal Reserve in 2017 after 5 decades in both the public and private sectors. Looking at Reston's association's internal functioning over the past several years, I've paid close attention to RA's fiscal and operational meanderings, and am well aware of the complexities involved in running and overseeing RA. If elected, I would be the board member with the deepest financial background, knowledge, and demonstrated capability to oversee RA's budget, to keep assessments within reason, preserve RA assets, and build consensus towards those goals. I have demonstrated ability to work with others as I have throughout my professional career. What are the external challenges that Reston faces? Let me first address the political issues. I'm an active founding member of the Coalition for the Planned Reston, which successfully fought to prevent the unwarranted densification of Reston's planned residential community zoning ordinance. I'm dedicated to Reston as a planned, sustainable, functioning community with 2 golf courses, all of Reston's open space, and a revision of the Reston Master Plan that makes sense for Reston now and for the future. Fortunately, Reston has been the model for diversity and inclusion since our founding, a feature that attracted many of us here. Now that unplanned parts of the county have been largely developed, we have become a prime target of developers because we are planned. Our challenges are, how do we grow and by how much? How do we retain our identity and integrity, our Reston soul and community vitality? How do we maintain any sense of housing affordability for the next generations? There are no easy answers, but we must take these issues without compromising our founding principles. We can't morph into another Tyson's regardless of political pressure from the county ever seeking increased revenue. We know that increasing our population without the necessary infrastructure to support that growth would be disastrous. We also know that the county has to compete with other jurisdictions for the scarce funds available for transportation and other infrastructure every year at the state level. Because the county controls the Dulles Corridor, transit rail stations, RA and its citizens had no influence over ambitious densification planned there. We must be ever more vigilant about what goes on outside the corridor. This is the area controlled by RA's Design Review Board, which is Reston's strongest weapon. But I believe another power is a strong collective RA voice stating development goals. This will be essential when the Reston Master Plan is reopened this spring by our supervisor, Walter Earklar. Next, I need to address climate change. I strongly support planning for the impacts of climate change that builds upon the excellent work of RA's Environmental Advisory Committee. We need to focus on stormwater management to protect the water quality of our lakes and streams, without which we can only expect greater expenses for dredging and other remediations. We need to increase native species plantings in our yards and open spaces that will better survive the projected temperature increases and provide cover as well as food for our local wildlife. And we need to preserve our tree canopy, the upper layer of mature tree growth that keeps summertime temperatures lower by 3 to 4 degrees than nearby Washington, D.C., contributes to CO2 conversion and lowers home energy costs. I promise to listen to you, the members, and will seek your input if elected. Right now, I can only reach you after you've contacted me, so we need to work with RA staff to build a digital network to effect two-way information flow. If elected, I would also ask the board to reinstitute the in-person district meetings to listen on what's affecting you and your neighbors. Thank you very much.
Hi. Hear me? Can you hear me, Erwin? Hi, I'm Sarah. I've been here 12 years. I don't have the 44 years that Bob does, but from the minute I stepped in here, we got married on Lake Audubon. We had my baby shower at Reston National Golf Course, multiple birthday parties. Anybody who's had a kid knows we've done plenty of those. I, as a parent, have enjoyed everything that Reston has to offer. We've got everything from museums to a zoo to playgrounds, multiple kids' classes. As a small business owner, I've got 3 stores. I have one in Vienna, one in Falls Church, and I fought very hard for one right here at Lake Anne. As a small business owner, you know the importance of stretching the dollar, so that kind of segues into why I'm running. 3 of my key issues that I want to focus on when I get on the board is smart money management. It doesn't mean that we just cut programs and close facilities, but it's about making our dollar go further. Stretching that dollar is something every parent knows how to do, and every small business owner is a pro at. It's a survival skill we need. The second thing we want to do is meaningful engagement. The very fact that RAs quorum for the election is 10%. I think we can do better than that. This is an important decision. You're trusting us with your dollars, and you have to be more than 10% participating in the elections. So that's one of my goals with this election, and I think by the turnout today, we can definitely hope we're going to get more than 10% participation. The last is a pet peeve. It's action-oriented leadership. I've sat through many, many meetings where we have members, I've been one of those members, we come up to the podium, we make our comments, they're very gracious, they thank us, they're very polite, and then we go away. What next? Do I call you? Do you call me? Do you have my number? It kind of leaves us hanging, so I think we need to go full circle, maybe come back to that member and say, we heard you. This is what we're doing. Even if we're not solving their problems, at least just saying, we heard you, we're working on it, this is where we stand right now. That will be a huge help. Lots of little things where I think I can bring my expertise as being a small business owner in effecting these 3 changes, or these 3 improvements, I should say, on the board. In keeping with that topic, I still have a couple of minutes, we're hosting 3 events. I have one on March 4th at the Fellowship House. We've had a lot of questions going, why is RA getting involved in senior living? Why do we have to, I think Caren Anton got that on Reston Now, going, why is she talking about senior living? It's absolutely essential that we talk about senior living. Look at the demographic. I have my mom sitting right there who's 75 years old. And we're not saying just bingo nights, but we're saying talk about infrastructure that helps our seniors. Talk about how to assist them, facilitate them. If they've got an issue with DRB, I can't imagine a world where my mom figures that out. She refuses to use a cell phone. So if you wanted to send an email, good luck. Those are the things that we need to help our seniors with and get involved. And I think Karen's doing a great job when she was doing the 55+ committee. It is a shame that we've let that go, but hopefully we'll be able to bring that conversation back on the table. The second event on March 4th, it's from 5 to 7 at Calypso's at Lake Anne. It's a pretty nice sports bar. We're talking about lakefront living. I don't know how many of you have access to a lake, live on a lake, have received recent letters regarding your boats on the lake, but that'll be a fun conversation. Again, please come to at least one of these events. The last one we're hosting is on March 8th at Hidden Creek Country Club. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's a golf course. And in Redmond, for the past 10 years, we've been talking about golf course. So please show up at least for one of these events. We're going to try as much as possible to have it live cast so you can watch it from home. Lastly, please check out my website. It's Sarah for Reston. That's the number 4, reston.com. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of housekeeping items. We have a lot of questions up here. We will try to get through them all. We'll just kind of pick them at random and read them, and then the candidates will have 1 minute to respond. Also, candidates, if you could make sure the microphone's close to your mouth so we can hear you. Pardon?
Are you still taking questions?
Yeah, we'll take questions. Also, if you want to ask a question, you can go up to the podium over there and ask it. So we have written questions. You can do it verbally if you'd like. Please make them short. And in handwriting I can read. Okay, so this came from the chairman, so I might as well.
No, it did not come from me.
Oh, it didn't? You handed it to me.
Well, I was being polite.
All right. Yeah, I'll do the election. Okay. The election committee has 5 questions, which I'll ask now. Again, we'll take them in the same order we did before. First one is, how can the board of directors be more effective in how can the board of directors be more effective in a respectful governing body?
Wow. That's a respectful governing body
Yeah.
and more effective. I think the best way for the board to be effective is to make sure we as directors prepare and keep apprised of everything that's going on in the community. In my opening remarks, I referenced how much work being a board director is, and a big part of that is just preparing for meetings so that we can engage intelligently in discussions and make wise choices when we vote. And to be more respectful, are you talking about to be more, can be more respectful of each other? Is that what you're talking about?
I just asked the question.
I think I just used up the minute anyway. Okay, so that minute went very fast.
Yes.
Okay, so how can the board be a more respectful and effective governing body? Well, communication, certainly. So my new communication platform is called Cluster 2020 for a reason. It's because I want to have RA members engage with me directly, one-on-one. My phone number is available on the RA website. If you look at the candidate materials, you can call me anytime. I've had several great phone calls about boat permits already, other issues like through a pool. People have called me directly. And I think a spirit of learning, because not everybody, this is a collaborative, collegial association, and I don't have all the answers. I want to communicate with you and learn what is most important to you so that I can try to devise a solution. I'm a graduate of a program at UVA where the motto is trust, civility, and respect. So I hope to carry that onto the board.
Effective and respectful. I think that there might sometimes be a misconception that RA has more power in some certain areas than they might. I think that making sure that we're fully transparent to all of the members, as well as make it clear the points that we can affect versus the ones that we're definitely your advocate, but the ones that are not solely on RA to make decisions for. Because there's a lot of other governing powers for a lot of the issues that come up that definitely affect the course of how to move forward. And so making sure that everybody understands the limits for this organization and how the overlap happens, and making sure that we are as diligent as possible to streamline each course for each organization.
I agree with Caren that the first duty of a director is to be well prepared for each of the meetings. And I wish I was smart enough to have created an app like Paul has created for the clusters. I think it is a great first step to improve the communication between RA, official RA, the directors and staff, and the clusters. It has been one of the areas that has been sorely lacking for as long as I can remember. Relative to effectiveness and of a board, the board has any board has two primary obligations. Its first duty is oversight over the operations to make sure that things are operating in accordance with procedure and policy. And the second is to advise management. And both of those are necessary for an excellent board. Thank you.
Respectful and effective. You're going to hear these three terms today all night. By the time you go home, you're going to be saying smart money management, meaningful engagement, action-oriented leadership. I'm sorry about that. But back to the meaningful engagement, we need to reach out. We need to be proactive. We need to invite the cluster leadership to be your boots on the ground and have a two-way communication. So I think if you hear the theme here, we're all saying the same thing. So there's obviously a lack in that area. And how do you do that is you listen, you educate, and lastly, empower. Listen when they show up, pay attention what they're saying. Educate when you have board meetings, please have materials available ahead of time and have complete materials ahead of time. So we're not missing tab F and then there's nothing in tab F. We don't know what's going on. And the last one is to empower. When the membership is empowered, like the turnout tonight, your board knows our responsibilities. We're hearing from you. We're on track. We don't veer off. Thank you.
Through these. Okay, we'll start with Paul this time. If elected, what would be your highest priority for the budget for Reston Associates?
Highest priority.
They're going to be stuck with what happens. So those are the two big issues.
I'm going to use a few seconds to clarify. I think the question was priority on the budget. Is that right?
Correct.
We are primarily a HOA. I think our focus needs to be member services. We're right about the outreach. We're absolutely right about communicating. But as part of member services, I think we need to focus, capital projects, timely capital projects. And I know this firsthand because I have a condominium at Lake Ann, and when infrastructure gets delayed, our property values sink. The second we need is definitely our facilities. And I think Paul was on point when he said Lake Thoreau Pool. But that's not the only one. Lake Thoreau Pool was almost 2 seasons too late. We should have jumped on Lake Thoreau Pool before we had to close for 2 seasons. We were part of the meeting. I think a few of us candidates were there at the working meeting when we met the membership. That was the primary concern. Timely repairs. Thank you. I'm nervous with the clock.
I would say yes to piggyback on what has already been said, making sure that our aging amenities and facilities are functioning and safe for our members. And I would also say another priority for budget is making sure that we are adequately staffed so that we can provide our members with the optimum service.
We'll start with Kerri. What are your thoughts on the incorporation of new condos, apartment buildings, et cetera, within the Reston community?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
I'm
that?
sorry, I need to speak up. What are your thoughts on the incorporation of new condos, apartment buildings, et cetera, within the Reston community?
I still didn't get the second half. The corporation of new condos, what? Sorry.
Pressure's on. Should take my own advice. All right, here we go. What are your thoughts on the incorporation of new condos, apartment buildings, et cetera, within the Reston community? Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Kerri?
I take it this question is about new condos and apartments that are not going to be part of Resident Association? Is that the gist of this
If
question?
that's the way you choose to interpret, feel free.
What do I think about them? Well, I will,
The question is for Gary.
oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think she's objecting that you go first. No.
Hit it, Terry.
You need more time?
No, I think the development of Reston is very important. The redevelopment of Reston is definitely important and crucial that we all have a say in what's happening moving forward. I don't want to hinder continuing to make this place a destination or get behind the times when it comes to development. We don't want to end up in a situation where we don't want to end up in any situations, really. We want to move forward together, collectively, as a group. But I think development is very important, and revisiting the master plan, looking forward, is where we need to go.
Okay. The current version of the comprehensive plan of which Reston's master plan is part, the TSAs, the transit station areas around, the immediate areas around the 3 metro stations are out of bounds in terms of any impact by Reston Association. That power was given away by the county. Does that mean we should not impact, that we should not have a say going forward? No, we should have a say, but it is going to be difficult because it is already, most of the projects have already been approved. 52 projects have been approved. The vast majority of those projects are for apartments. The potential number of apartments is going to be 44,000 in the area between Hunter Mill and Monroe Street. Just think about that. 44,000.
This is a topic that's very close to my heart because I've had one-on-one conversations. I don't know how many of you know Lincoln Building that went up on Sunrise Valley. It's recently opened. It has signs saying for lease. Lincoln is my landlord in Falls Church. One of my stores is located in Lincoln Falls Church. I've had a conversation with my landlord. He's a very nice guy, great mentor, and I've asked him why isn't he part of RA? And his simple answer has been, why would I? I have my own pools, I have my own facilities, and everything else RA has is free for all of us to use. So what that started off me on doing a little bit of research going back, because it's not fair that all of us pay into Reston Association and then these new developments get away for free. So Bob is absolutely right. There is language in the comprehensive plan. I think the county needs to work with RA on enforcing it and ensuring that these new buildings coming in either join the RA. Their options is either RA or RTC. I doubt they're going to go with bus properties, so I think we already have an in there. Thank you.
Is it me now? Okay, sorry. Sorry, but, yeah, so, and I mentioned this in my Reston Now comments also. I mean, as far as all the new housing that's going up, I hope that there's adequate affordable housing for our residents. I worry about that. And I also, I'm hoping that some of these units will join RA, if for no other reason, the design review board will have some say in how they look. Some of these buildings that are going up are not most attractive, in my opinion. So, yeah, so those are my thoughts about all the condos and apartments that are going up. I'm not too worried about those that are not joining RA, and you hear a lot about people using our amenities and walking our pathways. I'm not overly concerned about that, and I suspect this might come up in future questions.
Okay, a little change in format here. How many people have? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
Ed, go ahead.
No, no,
My fault. I confused things.
yeah, you did.
Don't confuse me. So I'm generally favorable to making places available for people to live. People need homes. But we've already seen a lot of the impacts of increased traffic at rush hour, noise, light, and air pollution. I think it's really important that we first think about reinventing the space and infrastructure that exists. One of my key points about the golf courses, for example, or development in general, is that monetization opportunities are available almost anywhere in Virginia, but I think there should be a compelling reason why someone would want to develop here and not have a equally good reason for wanting to contribute back to the community in a positive way. This is a planned community, it's a shared community, and the spirit of that needs to flow through every single building, regardless of who the residents are or how they can be here.
Okay, how many people have questions they want to ask at the microphone up at the podium? How many? Raise your hands, I can see. Okay, let's start with those now, and then we'll go to the written questions. You were first. State your name, your address, and then ask your question and make it short.
Full address? So, yeah, I'm Alan Schoen. I just moved to Hickory Cluster on Maple Ridge in December. So I had kind of a just general fun kind of uplift or, optimistic question, but given what Robert said about the transit corridor, I realized there's actually another question that seems way more important, which is that given that RA has no power over the transit corridor, that, we could just stop development altogether outside of the transit corridor, and the increase just inside those zones could be great enough to change everything. Like there's enough room there that the community can change without any input. What is the RA's actual role in this process? It would seem undesirable that you just have the county and developers building up there, and then the RA is kind of cleaning up the mess, building infrastructure behind them and enabling them to do more of it. But I guess I don't see another path. So that's my question is, what power does RA actually have, and how can you make this process go better?
Okay, we'll start with Bob.
I think I'm going to start on this one. RA as a collective has an enormous, or has the potential for an enormous amount of power in dealing with the Fairfax County government. It has been the case when most recently the community decided that it wasn't in its best interest to increase the zoning ordinance to permit additional development outside the TSA areas. Directly with the TSAs, the TSAs are controlled by the county. But we do have the county is not unreasonable when it is faced with dealing with a large pool of voters. And that is the single greatest power that we do have, is persuasion.
Who is it that you're trying to persuade?
Well, let's finish up here first. Finish their answers, and then we'll get to you.
So quick answer is RA represents 60,000 members, 60000. That's a huge number. When you show up here and you represent 100 members in your condo, the board pays attention. I think if you show up to the county and represent 60,000 members, the county is open to listening to us. And with the opening of the comprehensive plan, this is the perfect opportunity to have educated, informed candidates who can actually advocate for Reston with the county. I'm going to defer. I don't know if it's a popular thing to do right here, but I think everybody who's in the TSA should contribute to the RA. You're part of Reston. You're coming into our community. Be a part of it. Absolutely. I don't know what the amount is, what the right amount is, but I think there's a lot of pressure on Hank to bring in additional dollars. So maybe this is something he can focus on.
Time's up.
I have 5 seconds. It's okay.
It's
okay, I'm done.
According to my watch.
Yeah, just to know what's already been said, I mean, our power is in our voice as a community. Ultimately, the county does what the county does, but it's been proven that they do listen to us, so we just have to continue letting them know what we want.
When I'm in Richmond, I live up here and I spend most of my time up here, but when I'm in Richmond, what is really important is to develop positive working relationships, and that can be really hard. RA does collaboratively have a very strong footprint in Northern Virginia, and I think our input and how it's taken should be commensurate with that footprint. The most obvious action items that I think we could undertake as a board is to politely demand that our elected officials come visit us in Reston. We're happy to host them here, and be willing to discuss really anything that's of concern, because as our elected officials, it's their responsibility to work with us to solve pretty much any issue that we have in front of us.
And I think I agree with everybody else that's up here, that these developers and the county, they're our partners in this. I mean, they're here with us, and they should know what our concerns are and hear our collective voice. They're not our adversaries. I don't believe that they're coming to steamroll to do whatever they want with whatever land they want. I really think that having a healthy working relationship with them and a collective voice is the only way that we're going to be heard.
Okay. Somebody else has a question?
This gentleman asked the question.
Oh, okay, all right, so you're taken care of. Go ahead. Say your name, where you live, and be brief.
My name is Inder Sood. I've lived in Reston for 50 years, so that means... first, just a small comment. I'm glad to hear that all of you have emphasized listening to members. But I hate to tell you, I've tried to contact this board twice, all the members, not a single one of them, not a single one has bothered to respond. So I hope you'll keep your promise that you will listen to members and respond. The question I have is, having sat on many boards, the board faces a challenge of, on the one hand, not second-guess stuff, on the other hand, also keep an eye on them. Do you think Reston Association Board has a right balance on, what is your view on creating that balance? I mean, would you second-guess the staff sometimes on issues, or would you just go with what staff tells you to do?
Sarah.
I mean, we're Indian, it's not like all Indians know each other, but that question couldn't have been better for me. I have 3 stores, and it's not humanly possible for me to be at all 3 stores. And my first job is sitting right there, my child, my 10-year-old. So there is a fine balance between trusting your staff, empowering your staff to do the right thing, at the same time offering oversight to make sure that they're not running away with my profits. And I think the RA does a fairly good job, especially since they've learned some lessons in the recent past. However, I think some of those organizational structures can be readdressed. A quick example is, in my belief, I could be wrong, the CEO and the CFO are partners. You listen to each other, you talk to each other, it's almost like a marriage. But if you realize your CEO is doing something that's not good for the members and our money, the CFO should have enough of a relationship with the board to come to the board directly. That's just, my time is out. Thank you.
Well, the CEO reports to the board, the staff reports to the CEO. So if we as a board feel that there are, staff isn't performing as they should be, then we would communicate that to the CEO. And that's how that would work.
Generally, I definitely agree with Caren. Chain of command is always an important feature in any entity, for-profit or nonprofit. I think when you establish a good hierarchy, most decisions are going to go by without any issue. So we're really talking about that 10% of decisions that are the stickiest or have the potentially most hazardous outcomes. That's where I'd go back to one of my platforms is Cluster 2020, the idea of communication between board members and individuals. Direct contact with the at-large board member is an important key component of my candidacy, and I hope if I'm elected to be, to carry that through. Working with the CEO and the CFO to oversee the staff collaboratively would be my response to your question, sir.
I agree with what Caren and Paul have said. I mean, every leader, every person in staff needs to have oversight. And if they're not performing, then that needs to be addressed. And I don't think that it goes to a larger message. But I know that there have been issues in the past, but moving forward, I think transparency and accountability is what we need to hold each other to.
I agree with everything that people have said. I have to remind everybody that the board's role is not to manage the operation, but to oversee it and advise. If things are in a kerfuffle because people are not doing what they're supposed to do, the first line is, how do you find out about it? If you can't get a board member to call you back, you have a major problem. It may be that the board member doesn't even know that you've been contacted. So we have the technical capability of being able to improve communications. It needs to be done. I think that beyond that, you've got to just rely on staff and rely on the processes that you have in place.
You got a question? Name, address, be brief.
Barry Laurent, I'm president of the Lake Audubon Terrace Cluster Association on Lake Audubon Lakefront Community. I'm also part of a group of lakefront clusters that we've sort of banded together because we don't see ourselves being represented by resident association, and I'm glad you're having a little thing. All too often, when we think of resident association, we're the wayward children, and you're the strict parent. Okay. What can we do, since you work for us, what can we do so that we're more team players versus we'll go before the DRB? Can't cut tree down. You go before the board of directors with a concern, and nothing comes of it. So what can we do so we can have better liaison communication, and we don't feel like wayward children?
Karen?
What's your app, Paul? Cluster 2020? That's what we can do, and that's what we're hoping to continue to do better and better with, is outreach to the clusters and two-way communication. It's been 2 years since we've had a listening session in any of the voting districts. We need to reinstate that. Communication is the key, and we are not doing well enough with that yet. We need to continue to work on that.
Caren stole my answer partially. Cluster 2020, this really wasn't, I don't think I'm, reinventing fire or, discovering fire or anything here. This is something that I came up with independently because I've been having conversations at doors in the different districts, and people have been expressing similar sentiments or describing how they would like to bring up something, because it's what the app and what my communication plan is really about is anything. If you have an event that you want to share, so it can be positive. If you have a concern, if there's an observation from your cluster, all of this is part of developing strong ties between the clusters and within them. And I think the at-large director certainly, but of course, all directors, I think we all want to be at the center of that. I certainly do. So if you go to electbarry.com, please be, you can be, or I'll be your guinea pig, I guess, tonight. Please submit anything that is really burning in your mind, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
I appreciate you bringing it up. We have an understanding that there is an issue or the lack of communication, but improving that and making sure that we're transparent and partnering with all the clusters, I think is the paramount issue. We need to move forward together as partners. And this app, I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I think that having more open communication and hearing the individual clusters' issues and the lakefront issues specifically is going to be important moving forward.
I think the first thing that I would do if I were elected is meet with you and understand what the issues are. Secondly, engage staff so that they can provide you with their position on the issue. And see if we can work out a win-win situation. So many of the issues end up being, no, you can't do this or you can't do that. The recent boat issue has had to be walked back because it was not well communicated to the membership before action was taken. Those are the things that we can't afford to make mistakes upon, because it's once trust is lost, or once you don't get heard, it takes 10 or 15 times the effort to get it correct.
Hi, thank you so much for that question. Part of the reason I started with the events is I also serve on the board of School of Music at George Mason. We're a 23-member board, and my job there is Vice President Outreach. And I've had to change the way the board thinks, because we've always been sitting at Mason expecting audience to come to us. We've had to change that approach, and we've done that successfully in the past 2 years, where we bring our students out to the people. I think the common problem we've had so far is we're expecting you to come to us, and we're waiting. And when you do come to us, Paul's app is fantastic, right? We've all got phones, we've got email addresses. How is Paul going to get the rest of the board to answer your question? That, I think, is the key concern. And we need to be going out. We need to have meetings that Caren brought up. We haven't had those in the last 2 years. Those are the efforts that we need to restart. And I'm hoping that my events will help. Thank you.
Somebody else have a question? You were the first to raise your hand. Come on up. Come on down.
My name is Jihan Sharad. I just moved to Reston 1st of February to Chestnut Grove. And I had read all the candidates' goals. I think they're all very great. I also know that they're also going to take work and finances. And one of the questions that I actually had pertains to the goal of working to start a plan to revitalize some residential parts of Reston. I'd like to know how that would actually benefit the community, also how it's going to be funded to benefit the community, and how much of it is going to take the rest of us to contribute for that to actually happen. Thank you.
Could you repeat your question, please?
Yes. So the question is, we have a goal that's here that states that it's working to start the plan for revitalizing some of the residential parts of Reston. And the question is, how are you intending to do that? And also, how is that funded? How is that going to be funded with the rest of the community?
Okay, so revitalizing, I'm going to take this very broadly without any specifics, but I'll try to put in examples where I think of them. I'll go back to Lake Thoreau Pool, so that's something that RA is undertaking. if you want to talk about revitalizing, I think, of course, that's one of the optimistic points. I think optimistic opportunities for RA to revitalize and reinvigorate a community area. In the other parts of the maybe on like walking trails or billy goat trails, I think that maintenance, the way that we can revitalize or continue to maintain their current state, is working with the staff and most effectively use the resources that we have now before we think about expending or allocating anything new. And I think that, time's up.
I'm going to take this from like a homeowner's perspective. There are many aging properties. We're aging as a town right now. I think that having a plan and standards for how we're redeveloping in each neighborhood and each cluster in particular is definitely paramount moving forward. And I think that us working hand in hand with the Design Review Board to develop these standards and working more closely with the clusters to make sure that their standards are still up to date is what's going to help us move forward most effectively.
This is a difficult issue because we're dealing with private property in all cases. And it even becomes more complicated when you're dealing with clusters because you have multiple people who are going to be affected, and it even becomes more complicated when you're dealing with condos. So single-family homes, not so difficult. The others, and if I'm reading into your question, there are a couple of communities or clusters within Reston that are in dire need of upgrades. Reston Association, as it can provide counsel through the DRB, but it's not responsible for the redevelopment or the restoration. Like it is, as much as we would like it if you did it, hate to say if you did it once, you'd have to do it for everyone who came to you.
This is a topic. I have a store at Lake Ann. I think I've said that 4 times tonight. I have a store at Lake Ann. Lake Ann is our first village center. It's our pride and joy. It's our treasure trove. It's our historic property. How is it that the DRB that goes after single-family homes when you have the wrong shade of blue on your door has let Lake Ann infrastructure fail? There needs to be enforcement. I agree it's private property, but if you can enforce it in a single-family home, we need to be enforcing it across the board. The other area where we can help is we were at the cluster meeting, I think most of us here, for Sadler Oaks. They're looking at repaving their parking lot. And repaving the parking lot is a huge expense for a small cluster, and they're looking at doing it 5 years down the road. This is where some of us can help with connecting them to resources. And this is just simply from my research. There are grants out there if they did permeable surfaces, and it was just directing them that way. I think the RA can start providing resources for these communities. I don't know if that helps you. Thank you.
This cluster thing is really a two-way street. One of the issues our covenants department has to deal with all the time is DRB, is clusters not updating their design guidelines and their use and maintenance guidelines. So I go around on inspections with the covenants committee because I'm the board liaison, and so we do that once a month, and you see the difference in the clusters and how they're maintained. And part of the problem is some of the clusters just need to be more proactive about getting their guidelines to covenants and DRB so that they can be enforced. That's one way to revitalize communities. In Hunters Woods, Dogwood, we're looking at things to make the community more attractive, repurposing the ball field, the Butterfly Meadow Overlook that I got approved on the board last year is going to help. Partnering with Public Art Reston to do things like the underpasses. All those things help revitalize communities, and the way they're funded is through the budget process.
Time's up. Okay, we have one more question from the audience. Oh, 2 more questions. All right? Lady with her hand up. There you go. State your name, address, and be brief.
Gladly.
Thank you.
And the responses will be brief as well. My name is Lynn Millstone. I am Vice President of the Reston Citizens Association, and I'm a resident at Golf Course Island Cluster. And my question for each of the candidates is, do you agree, yes or no? And all I'm asking is for yes or no. You don't have to go into any. Do you agree, yes or no, that Hidden Creek and Reston National Golf Courses are an essential element of Reston because of their integration into Reston's natural open space areas and because of the active recreational opportunities they provide?
Kerri?
Yes.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with the resolution that the board adopted back in 2016, that the 2 golf courses shall stay golf courses.
Sarah?
Absolutely, yes. And I actually had a question from Rescue Reston, ask all the candidates for our feedback, and I said, I live on Reston National, it's my backyard. And they said, that doesn't mean you're for it. It does, it absolutely means I'm for it. Please, let's be very clear. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think people who bought properties on golf courses should be surprised one day to see there's no more golf course.
Okay, we'll take one more question from the audience.
No,
Trying to move things along here.
Ed, do you need to give me a handicap? Sorry, that one was too easy.
Sorry.
So, yes, of course, I agree with the question as asked. My motivation, my primary motivation for saying yes is about monetization. So I work in the private sector, and I previously worked in the public sector. So it's been an interesting transition for me to see what the motivating factors are in a day-to-day. If you acquire property, any property, you want to make the most out of it. That's great. That's fantastic. That means job growth. That means economic development in general. That can mean positive cultural diversity, inclusion into the communities from new people who are coming here, and we want that in Reston. But there has to be some kind of compelling reason. There would have to be something existential to convince me that this property, these 2 properties in particular, had to have a replacement for our beautiful open spaces. So simple as that.
One more question from the audience, please.
can't we get the fun question that gentleman wanted to ask?
I'm sorry?
That gentleman had a fun question before he changed it, so I was just wondering what that was. I thought we could have a fun question.
I've been living in Reston for over 30 years, and one of the problems I have with it now is that it's very noisy. And one of the problems that I find that creates that noise is the airport. I know that the ambulances and the police department, there's nothing we can do about that because those are necessary. But I do think that this board has power to be able to work with Herndon and the other communities with the airport so that they can possibly reduce that sound. And has that ever been anything part of your agenda?
I think, Bob, you're up next.
I think it's an excellent question. There was an article in the press within the last week that the flight patterns at Dulles have changed, and we're going to get more noise instead of less, I'm afraid.
I don't like to hear this.
No, I don't like to hear it because I used to be very quiet in my neighborhood, and it's not anymore. How one attacks that issue, I'm not sure. But it certainly would be something that we can, if the board should look into and try to address.
Absolutely. That's been a hot topic on Nextdoor, that the airplane noises have definitely gone up. And there have been several questions asking if the flights are actually flying closer to the ground, what's going on. I don't think there's been, yes, there's an article, but I don't think TSA has actually been very clear. And definitely RA representing 60,000 members, I think we can maybe ask our CEO to write politely to TSA and get a more detailed, more accurate, more definitive answer. And then go from there, figure out what are our options.
It's not just the flight pattern, it's the warming up of the planes. You can hear them warming up all the way to the Lake Ann area.
Correct.
And there should be something done for the warming up of the planes, not just their flight patterns.
Absolutely.
I honestly don't know what what we could do about that. But as Bob said, it's certainly something that we can explore.
Paul?
Thanks, Ed. So my answer has a couple of different short parts. Noise pollution in general should be, I think that should be an open spaces issue that we should all be concerned about. I walk to work and I love my walk. It's nice and quiet. I start my day and I end my day with solitude and peace and quiet. So that touches all issues, specifically to airports. So John Wayne Airport in California has a very interesting, if nerve-wracking, they call it an aerial maneuver, where they actually shut off the engines temporarily after they take off. That was at the request of nearby neighborhoods. And it took a couple of years and some elbow grease, but it's achievable. It really happened. So there's nothing stopping us from performing a similar request, working through the Airports Authority and the authorities in Richmond.
I think I agree that we should have a conversation. I'm not sure what we can do about it, but it's definitely worth having the conversation. As far as the development that's still happening in Reston, in particular with noise pollution, I wish that we could all walk to work. That would be lovely. Walk, bike, rollerblade, whatever your preferred mode. But I'm hoping that as Reston continues to develop, especially along the TSA, that different modes of transportation will be considered for the people that are in close proximity to their workspace.
Okay. Next question. Deals with planning and growth. What role will RA play in Supervisor Alcorn's planning review? And the next up is Sarah.
We were I want to say at least most of the candidates were at Supervisor Alcorn's meeting that he had at Lake Anne not too long ago. I definitely think, keep going back to this number, 60,000 members, RA represents all of us. When he opens up the Reston Master Plan, we need to have a seat at the table. We need to be a part of that conversation, not a silent partner, but a vocal, I'm not saying aggressive, we don't need big fights, he's been really nice to us, he's willing to work with us, he seems really positive, he's my neighbor nearby. We can definitely advocate for our members and make sure that when the Reston Master Plan is opened, we are adequately represented as Restonians. Thank you.
We sort of touched on this already, but yes, I mean, to be a voice, to work alongside with the supervisor's office. He has stated time and again that he will listen to what the people in the district are telling him, and I believe that. So we just have to make sure that we have a place at the table.
So the same way that I think that members of the board of directors should be active listeners, I absolutely believe that Supervisor Alcorn has taken that approach. It's critical to me that any solution to this or any conversation always starts with the members. It has to be from the bottom up. But there has to be an operationalized approach, because Supervisor Alcorn is just one person. He can't meet with every member individually. So my preferred approach would be to have clusters engage their members as vigorously as possible, as early as possible, and then have the board members physically show up to those meetings, meet with cluster presidents, communicate, again, as I've been talking about tonight, as actively and as consistently and frequently as possible, and amassing those preferences, observations, and advice from the community, and enable Supervisor Alcorn to do the best work that he possibly can.
I think that I agree with what Paul and Caren are saying. I think that we have a presence here, and again, it's a partnership, and to maintain that healthy partnership is the biggest priority that we have, and also listening to the members and their perspective and things that they're concerned about. So I think just maintaining that partnership is going to be critical in order to have our voices heard.
Supervisor Alcorn is impaneling a 15-member task force One of the members of the task force will be a representative of RA. How RA uses its membership is incredibly important. So we have a member at the top, the information has to flow up from the membership to the member on the task force. The member on the task force is going to have to be responsible for keeping the membership informed, first of all, the scope of the work that's going to be done and the responsibilities for which the RA will have an influence, and keep the membership informed throughout the process. Supervisor Alcorn, and I'll finish really quickly, wants all of his meetings to be open, so anyone from the community can show up. So it behooves you to get informed. It also behooves RA to inform you about what their role is going to be and how effective it is. Its effectiveness will be determined by your input. Sorry.
Okay. We have more questions than we have time for. If we did them all, we'd be here till about 11:30, I think. So we're going to wrap it up at 9, unless somebody has an objection. I see none, so let's continue. Next person up would be Caren. It says recreational programs and facilities. Are you in favor of the county taking over some of the association's recreational spaces, and if so, which ones?
Am I in favor of what, the recreational, I'm sorry?
Are you in favor of the county taking over some of the association's recreational spaces, and if so, which ones?
Of counting them? Is that, I'm sorry?
The county.
The county taking
Oh,
over.
the county taking over?
Sorry for a moment.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's fine. Paul?
No, absolutely not. Some of my fondest memories growing up were as a lifeguard and swim instructor and camp counselor. There really are the summer camps build lasting memories and friendships they have for me, and that all begins with us, the adults, giving back to those programs after we've gone through them ourselves, and enable the next generation to have the best experience possible. If we relinquish that control, we're effectively allowing others to decide what kind of memories and friendships our youngest residents are going to be having. So I'm not in favor of that.
No, I'm not in favor of that. I think that there are ways for us to utilize our assets or rehabilitate our assets to reinvigorate the community, to use them a different way or better, or take advantage of what we already have, but I don't think that our control should be relinquished, no.
RA property is private property which we all collectively own. You could not expect Fairfax County Park Authority to keep up our amenities to the same standard that we keep them up ourselves. So I'm not in favor of it at all.
Absolutely not. We take pride in our facilities. We've been trailblazers leading the way. Larry and his team do an amazing job, and I don't think we want to give that up to the county. Simple answer, no.
Speaking of Larry, your turn.
We planned this, we knew this was happening.
Thanks for the segue.
I was wondering if I was going to get up here. I was on the schedule at 7:45, but Ed was on a roll, so I just let him go. So as I told Ed earlier, we did have over 30 questions, and so we're kind of going through them, we're aggregating. There were 2 or 3 that were very similar, so we're kind of pulling mostly randomly, but we want to catch those where there were repeat concerns. So this one is, what concrete steps will candidates take to reduce assessment dues? And Ed, since I just stepped up here, are we starting, who are we starting
with? Paul.
With Paul. Excellent. We'll start with Paul.
Okay. So this is a great question. Obviously, this impacts everybody in this room. I think it's a bit of a loaded question to say automatically reduce. It's important, I think, first to determine, that's really a two-parter potentially, because if you did decide to reduce, by how much? And that decision really I think that starts with the CFO and the CEO. The board would have to determine if and when, if at all, that would happen. I'm open to any good idea. I don't think there's necessarily a really, really bad idea out there. But it does come down to dollars and cents. And at least on a day-to-day basis, that's the world that I live in. And I have to make resource allocation decisions for both staff, and that impacts their lives and their livelihood, and the programs that I have responsibility for. So my simple answer is, what's the bottom line? And how can we maintain everything we have without detrimenting anybody in the process?
I agree with Paul. I think that that's a loaded question. I think that there are concerns that people have about kind of how their dues are being used. I think that, again, back to transparency and making sure that the members know exactly what they're paying for every year is very important. Again, by how much, like what is the end goal? I think we're on the same page there. Yeah, but I think it just goes back to transparency and understanding exactly, having each member understand what their dues are going to, because then there wouldn't really be question about why or how.
First of all, I think Reston Association should be able to, like any organization, be able to defend why it's charging what it's charging. Reston has really two components to its operation. Number one is its operations, the 15 or 16 programs or amenities which it provides to its members. And then the not often spoken about part is the reserve. We have enormous amounts of capital assets that have to be maintained. Under the current reserve study, which was completed in June of last year, Reston will spend on average $4 million in each of the next 30 years to maintain its assets. So both of those factors have to be considered when you come to what the assessment ought to be.
I think the simple answer is, as a board member, and I hope all of those here and the other board members in the audience remember, RA's money is not RA's money. It is our neighbor's money. Every single dollar counts. Every single dollar that goes towards an assessment is a dollar that you're taking away from our family budgets, from our child's education, from our children's college fund. If we remember that, I think every decision that we make with that thought as number one, I don't think we'll have unnecessary spending, we won't have to trim the fat, but all of the other things that come along with it is, I think Hank and the fiscal committee are already looking at non-assessment income. This is probably where our developers contributing to it comes in. There's also with the facilities, you can look at public-private partnerships, there are proffers, and I know they're already working on it. If you can show up to some of the fiscal meetings, it's very educational. They are on time. They don't keep going past time like me, but please try to show up.
While it would be great if we could reduce assessments, I honestly would be happy with just maintaining them and keeping them from going up and up and up all the time. As we all know, the cost of, as Bob mentioned, maintaining our facilities, as with all costs for all of us in our lives, keep going up. There is a tremendous effort going on now by Hank and staff to generate more non-assessment revenue, and with the goal of keeping assessments down, or maybe even someday reducing them. But the reality is that may not be possible. In comparing our assessments to other similar associations, we're not out of line. We pay for all of this wonderful stuff. So reducing would be fine. I'd be happy with maintaining.
Okay, while we're on that theme, then the next question is, and we're going to start with Kerri on this one. Is it okay if some residents do not pay their assessment And what should happen to those that do not pay their assessment?
I think everybody that's a member of RA should pay their assessment. I think that to maintain the community that you're a part of and that we all love, I think that everybody should pay with that understanding that they've been paying. I think it would depend on how many people weren't. I don't want to draw that line anywhere, but we don't want to have too many people with like past dues, outstanding dues. That's not the goal for us. It's not going to help us move forward or to reduce anything or even maintain for that matter. I would like to say that a fine would help, but that is just kind of contributing, I think, to the overall problem. I'm not really sure. But everybody should pay. Everybody that's part of our should definitely pay.
I agree with everything that everyone has said. But I would bring it back that you have a legal obligation to pay your assessment. After the payment goes 90 days past due, it becomes a bad debt. The most effective way to deal with it, even though it's ugly, is to file a lien on the property. So RA will be paid eventually, but it may take until the property is sold. But under Virginia law, you can go after the property and force it into foreclosure. Not that you would want to do that, but if it could be done. Let me be the ogre.
Let me understand the question. Are we talking about collections, or are we talking about the new condominiums or people that are part of Reston that do not pay?
It is current members who have a responsibility to pay the assessment.
Where's Tony the one night that we need him? I'm assuming that as council, there is a collections policy in place. Even if you don't pay your phone bill, we have late fees and fines, and it keeps adding up. RA is no different. It's not fair for us to bear the brunt for our neighbors. And I think it should be equally enforced. If you're enforcing it for me, I think it should be absolutely enforced on anyone else. Now, I'm sure there are some that have affordable housing. There are means, there are ways that the county has programs set aside. That's absolutely different. This is, if you can afford to pay it, please pay it. It's not fair to burden your neighbors.
Yeah, there are, people of limited means, we work with them and offer reduced rates or payment plans. You all know that you can do an installment plan. It costs a little bit extra, but we do work with those people. People who just don't pay their assessments are, essentially stealing from their neighbors. And yes, there are actions that are taken.
So, first of all, I think it's critical that everybody in the community give back in some way, whether it's your time, if you can afford it, but also, it's important for members. If there isn't a compelling reason for their economic situation, that if they're just delinquent, then I think RA should take a posture that ensures that they are paying their dues. Everybody gives back equally in that sense. Any fiscally healthy organization has to have equally contributing parts. It's kind of as simple as that to me. But I think it's also important, with that answer in mind, that we evaluate how those individuals or households might have gotten to that point. It shouldn't just be incumbent on us to enforce a collections policy or agenda. We should always keep the bigger picture in mind and know what our members are going through.
All right, thank you. All right, switching gears a little bit, our next question, we're going to start with Bob. Did you want to pop up there?
Good evening. My name is Gary Young, and I've been a Reston resident for about 20 years. I've been living in the Washington DC area for 40 years, and I'm originally from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, just by way of context for this comment. I'm deeply disturbed by some of the philosophy here, in that we as a community have various means. We try to attract people who are from different races, classes, orientations of one sort or the other, religious orientations, etc. So to have a kind of just blanket approach to collections, I think is sad. Having just emerged from Chapter 7 bankruptcy protection, I'm particularly sensitive to this particular issue. And all I can say is that I worked diligently to try to get employment and could not find it for a year and a half. And it forced me into seeking protections. So I just would invite the candidates to reflect carefully on, what kind of Reston you want to have, one that's adversarial or believes in protecting the relationships of all members of the community. Thanks.
That was not necessarily a question, so.
That's correct.
All right, but thank you for your comment.
I think it's worthy of an answer. I think Reston, as a community, has been incredibly inclusive and welcoming. When I refer to non-payment, that is after all of the counseling and help that could be afforded, was afforded, and work with the individual. But in the final analysis, as virtually everyone else has said, when all else fails, it doesn't affect the individual as much as it affects the property. So there has to be a medium, and I think that's the way it is achieved.
Do any of the other candidates want to say anything?
This is another reason we need to be working with the county and a lot of the other organizations to have programs where, when it's normal, all of us fall through hard times. I have a small business and I have been closed since September. I still have a mortgage I have to pay. I still have a $1,100 condo fee I have to pay at Lake End, so I feel your pain. We don't all have bank accounts that we can write checks never ending, but I think we should work with other organizations and the county and have programs to help, so that it is streamlined and help is easily accessible. We don't want to wait till your 90 days passed and your late fees have piled up. I don't know if that addresses, if that's the right approach, but that would be one that I would take. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say that we're not heartless. In fact, we're actually pretty lenient and tolerant of people, and we certainly would take into consideration what their personal situation was. But when non-payment of assessments reaches a very high level, then we're all affected by that. So, when necessary, we need to take some action.
I would go actually back to my answer before that and try to emphasize that the most important thing that we can do, not as necessarily as board members, but as members of this community, is try to understand what's happening with our neighbors. And I feel that it's, if you want to run for the board or just live here, you should always be willing to extend the hand of friendship and understanding. If that's, a foundational element of our relationships from the beginning, then it's going to be much easier to address the serious issues that come up in life sometimes. And we'll not just be able to understand more readily, but be in a position to help those individuals who might need to go through some kind of reconciliation process.
Kerri, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, well, that's why it's hard for me to kind of prescribe a blanket solution for everybody, because it really is based on the individual. And like everybody up here is saying, that we would definitely work with everyone's individual circumstance. But it's about helping our community and helping our neighbors. So we will do that in any capacity necessary.
Alrighty, next question is definitely shifting gears a little bit. If Reston has assets that are not being well utilized, should they be disposed of? And we are going to start with Sarah.
That's a loaded question. Yes and no. If we have assets that are not being utilized by our members, it's not simply about making money, but if there are some assets that are being heavily used, then absolutely those assets need to be maintained and stayed. Just keep it open. But if there are some that are not being used, not being utilized, and are costing us money in maintaining them, and if we have opportunities to unload them, sell them, work around it, absolutely we should look at it. That comes back to our answer of how do we bring down our assessments. We don't want our assessments to be paying for assets that are barely used. Thank you.
Yeah, the issue is how do we determine what's being underutilized? And we're working on that. We have it for our pools. I think we're going to have it for our tennis courts. We also have to take into consideration what our members have told us through the brand and marketing study. But ultimately, if we have amenities that are not being used, they probably should be eliminated. What we have to remember, though, is you can't just take a pool away and put up, an apartment building. It's, the area is designated for recreational use. It has to stay recreational use.
So this always comes down to a dollars and cents question. I think that's kind of the obvious response, if uncreative. Fiscal liabilities are something that has to be handled on a case-by-case basis, starting with the most expensive or the most potentially hazardous to the organization, to Reston Association. I face these kinds of problems both at the Commonwealth level in my role as an appointee and in my daily life in my tech industry profession. When you start applying one rule to every situation, you're probably going to end up with solutions that don't fit the problem. That's a hammer looking for a nail. I think every property needs to be fine-tuned and tweaked, and the board should have oversight over that on a constant basis and make decisions that make the most sense at the time when they're made.
Yeah, I think the assets should definitely be studied. Underutilization, again, is kind of a broad term by which groups are we providing the same kind of resources in a different capacity that's readily available to that same group. I think that for each one of our assets, there might be innovative ways to use them that we're not currently thinking about right now. So having a fresh perspective or having an open mind for ways that we're not getting the best benefit out of it now might be a new way to think about it. But just kind of eliminating assets it's a little concerning. Elimination is such a final word, but I think that there's other ways to potentially use these assets that we're not considering currently.
It's a difficult issue, but it's one which we may face. It seems to me that it's not something that should be a surprise. If you are tracking the use of assets like a pool or a set of tennis courts, and they over time are underutilized, number one, you should try to improve the utilization, make it more attractive to use those facilities, if necessary, improve the facilities in order to increase utilization. If all else fails, as Paul says, it becomes a dollars and cents issue. But I just right now don't see how, without a specific example, you can you can draw generalizations about what you should do with underutilized assets. You can do something else with them.
All right, thank you.
Larry?
Would you like to come to the podium, please? Use the microphone.
I just want, Joel Compton I live on Lake Ann. I just want to take your attention to the utilization of vehicles by RA. Reston Association has 3 trucks at least that they send every job. Just look at it. It doesn't take anything to realize how much we send our trucks and our vehicles around the county. Take a look.
All right.
Is it mine?
What,
Do we know whose turn it is?
does anybody want to comment on that? Or I can just go on to the next question.
Without knowing the circumstances, I really couldn't answer that.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question here. What suggestions do you have for getting a younger demographic, the next generation, more involved in the community and becoming more active in RA? And we're going to start with Caren.
That's a good question, because I think we definitely do need a younger demographic. The face of Reston is changing. We have people who have been here for decades, and we have a lot of new younger people who are coming in. So again, I think one way to do that, I think, that would get the attention of the younger people is already underway, because we now have a social media person on staff, and to increase our social media profile out there, and hopefully that will attract more younger people. Pickleball, although it's attracting people of all ages, it's attracting a lot of young people too. Perhaps finding ways to hold community events that would be particularly attractive to the younger people. But I think it's a good question, because I think it's important that we do that.
So I think this is a great place to live. I came here because Reston, and I think it has an elevated quality of life. I think the amenities here are, prima inter pares, second to none. And I think getting more people involved, it starts with the programs that I discussed earlier: summer camps, swim lessons, ball fields. I think all the sports programs. And involvement with, the exchange between generations is going to facilitate the best memories and develop friendships amongst our community members that will hopefully last a lifetime. And that's going to encourage them to continue to stay. I know of communities down in Southwest Virginia that are paying influencers to promote their cities because people can't find a good reason to go there. I could never imagine that ever happening here in Reston. We have some of the best amenities in the Mid-Atlantic, so.
I'm hoping that me being on the board is a good first step for that. I've been here for decades, but I'm young. And I hope that engaging my peers is going to help. The problem right now is that we have activities and resources for children and for aging seniors, and there's not really much in between. So I think having more activities that are geared towards just middle-aged people, with kids, without kids, working full-time, working part-time, several jobs, we're missing an entire chunk of people, and I don't think that they know how to get engaged, and so I'm hoping to help kind of facilitate those first steps.
I think that both Kerri and Paul are absolutely correct. We need to engage them, and through social media. I know what people who are younger, like Kerri, may not have the same interests that I have, but there is a way there has to be a way to be able to engage them. Because it's right here. You know, we have, not only do we have a big enough group of people, we also have the facilities to be able to accommodate different groups, whether it be mountain biking, you know, Sufi dancing, whatever it might be. You don't have to look very far in this vicinity to find just an absolute variety of activities and events that you can go to.
Can I answer?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to.
Thank you. I want to say we have to go with a two-pronged approach. One is a lot of young people can't afford to buy in Reston. We need to absolutely look at affordability. Can they actually live here? And how can we help them with that? The second is, yes, everyone said social media. We're all using YouTube, Facebook, we're trending. However, we also need to go where the youngsters are. And one of the events we're hosting is at a sports bar. So if that's where they are, let's find ways to reach them where they go. If you're talking about mountain biking and sports that they're interested in, my only fear is RA is at the end of the day a HOA. We don't want to start hosting wine and cheese events and go into event management. We can work effectively with our community partners. RCC does a fantastic job with their classes. I've taken several ceramic classes at the RCC at Lake Ann. So I think we can work effectively with community partners. Please, Hank, don't start going into planning wine and cheese nights for the youngsters. Thank you.
All right, for us to stay on time and hit our closing time of 9, we are going to go to the candidates' closing statements, and we're just going to do 1 minute, but you can't get much out of 1 minute. So we're going to do 2 minutes. But I think, Caren, did you have a question before? Okay.
I have a 60-second question to ask and answer.
The question is, as volunteers for us, how many hours a week are you planning to spend?
And I believe we're starting with Paul this time.
Let me see. I'm going to take a full minute to give you a complete answer. So part of the reason why I'm running is because I've been doing this work, as I've emphasized several times down in Richmond for a couple of years now. But I see the same opportunities and the same issues at the Commonwealth level right here in Reston. So I prefer to transition to do that work here at home rather than travel very far to do it. I guess per week, I don't know. If I can come hang out, Chris, and we can work together, then I'd probably be more productive. 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. I think the needs of the community need to be met by the board members themselves. So there's no floor, there's no ceiling.
I don't have a number for you, I'm sorry. It's as many hours as it takes to make sure that we're getting the members heard and making sure that we're moving forward and accomplishing our goals. I think the more that we hear, the more hours we'll put in, and simultaneously try to streamline everybody's workflow, so try to be as effective as possible while trying to put in as much effort as possible.
Given the number of meetings that exist between committee work and advisory committee work, I would estimate to do, what I would be willing to do is whatever it takes, but it would probably take from 15 to 20 hours a week at least to do a reasonably good job, depending upon the issue.
So I don't know if they're going to run away after my answer, but the reason I'm running for the one-year position is I'm not kidding. I'm fully aware this is a full-time job. And I realized that the day I started campaigning, with the emails, with the research, with the sitting through meetings, talking to staff. And you're absolutely right. If you want to do a thorough job, it's not just showing up at meetings, it's a lot of the groundwork. And I see Kathy and Hank, they're smiling. They've probably put in 60, 80 hours. I'm sorry, I can't do that, but I can at least promise I'll take this on like a full-time job. Will I be here past a year? Depends on how well I do and what you think of me and if I come back. But for the 1 year, I guarantee you this is going to be a full-time job. This is not a joke. This is a priority for me. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah, if you're an officer, it's going to be even more time because you have additional times spent with Hank and Larry and outside meetings and events. But, I said in my opening statement that this is a lot of work and it takes a lot of time if you're really committed, because as has been mentioned, we do serve on other committees other than just going to board meetings once a month. It depends. I would say on average, 20 to 25 hours a week. That means there are some weeks that I'm here 3 or 4 nights. There are some weeks that I'm not here at all, but I would say it averages out to somewhere around 20 hours, including all the prep time for meetings and everything else.
All right. Well, I want to thank the audience for the insightful questions, both spoken and written. And we are now going to, and the answers from our candidates, and now we're going to start with Kerri, I think is where we ended up for the starting for the closing statements. And we're going to give you, we'll finish right on time at 2 minutes if you stick to the 2 minutes.
Okay. Might be a little
Everybody.
under.
No pressure.
Not going to talk about myself again. So thank you all for taking the time, but I'm really excited at the opportunity. I hope to engage my peers and people my age to get people invigorated and involved. I hope to hear all of the members' comments and concerns moving forward to implement serious plans to move forward. Like I said, I grew up here. This is my hometown. I am fully committed and invested in everything that happens here. My family's always been very involved in the community, and this is just my opportunity to give back myself. And again, my design experience and hopefully aligning with the Design Review Board and other boards, other committees, will just be for the greater good, bring new and innovative ideas and a fresh perspective to RA.
I want to thank everyone here tonight and everybody watching on YouTube for joining us for this scintillating evening, and particularly my fellow candidates. Cheers to us all. I hope that my answers to tonight's questions have shown my dedication to service and have distinguished me as someone with the physical and land use experience and knowledge to best serve RA members. I have no other agenda. I believe that Reston Association, which represents 25,000 households, is our community's most effective voice to influence what will Reston become. If elected, I will work diligently to ensure that RA's voice remains independent, strong, and truly represents the best interests of our members. Lastly, please vote. Please vote. I would love your vote. But if my vision isn't compatible with your own, I still urge you to vote. We need your participation to make Reston the best that it can be. If you have any questions, you can reach me at bobpetrine.com with your questions and concerns. That's www.bobpetrine.com. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for sitting through this so patiently. And I can only imagine what we look like on YouTube. And I was telling my friends, as long as I don't show up on the Late Late Show, I'm happy with whatever happens tonight. Tonight, I'm just going to read it off because it's a little emotional for me and I don't want to veer off topic. Tonight, we've fielded several questions. You've heard several answers. Issues have ranged from our dues to the absolute importance of protecting our open spaces. As a parent, a homeowner, a fellow Restonian, I know we don't simply need a body to fill the seat. We don't need roundabout language, we need straightforward answers. We need a board member who is invested in Reston. We need a board member committed to Reston. We need a board member who can stand up for Reston. Who here can stand up to the county and truly represent you? That's the question you're asking yourself. With the new supervisor opening up the master plan, this is not the time for on-the-job training or learning about Reston for the first time. This is time to advocate for Reston, to be a brave and bold voice that is not afraid to ask the hard questions. Please, for all of us Restonians, I urge you to make a carefully considered decision when electing your representatives. RA needs to work for all of its members, not just the wealthy, the well-connected, but every single one of our members. I was going to say please vote, but Bob stole that. Accountability encourages more member participation. If you know your voice matters, you will show up. So please let your voice matter. Please vote. Please write to me, call me, knock on my door, sarah4reston.com. That's number 4, reston.com. Thank you.
I'm not going to take up very much time. I think most of you know me. I've been serving on this board for just under 2 terms. As I said in Reston now, in many ways, I feel like I'm just hitting my stride. There's mountains of information to learn when you become a board member. And I don't think you ever really get to the top of that mountain. But I think that the people in my district, Hunters Woods, Dogwood, and hopefully throughout Reston, know that I'm a person who commits fully. And as I mentioned in my opening statements, there's more that I want to do. I'm not done yet. So I very much would appreciate your support. Fortunately, I'm unopposed, but I need your vote. Not enough people in Reston vote in these elections. We're not even at 20%, and I know it would make the elections committee very happy, and it would make me very happy if we could see that number start climbing. We want to make sure that everybody in Reston is engaged. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you for listening out there, and thanks for your support.
Thank you. I think I'm the final act of the evening. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you to the Elections Committee and to the staff for putting this on tonight. I'm running because I want to apply common sense and transparent thinking to the at-large position. It's what I do as a tech industry executive on a daily basis, and it's what I do as a governor's appointee. I see opportunities to apply that thinking in 3 different areas. The first being how dues are collected and spent. My first action item will be to evaluate the web track system and see not only how we can continue to make improvements to that, but how members interact and pay their dues and where those resources go. Second, I want to connect directly with each and every one of you. Cluster 2020 launched today, and I hope that some of you will at least visit it and evaluate it and give feedback. If you can leave questions and concerns, I'd love to know what's driving you to come to meetings like this and to show up at your cluster meetings and be engaged in your communities. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to vote. Third, I'm eager to tackle oversight of our shared open spaces, balanced development, and a commitment to Bob's vision for Reston as a planned community. If you want to connect with me directly, my phone number is on my website, electberry.com. As is the Cluster 2020 portal. Thank you, and I humbly ask for your vote.
All right, let's give a round of applause to all of our candidates.
Sorry, yes.
Sorry. I was going to make you go again.
I was on my game.
You're young, you can do this more than once.
All right, yeah, we're not starting now. So thank everybody coming out. Ballots for the election will be mailed or emailed out on Monday, based on the preference that you gave to us. And as a reminder, ballots are due back on Friday, April 3rd at 5 p.m. So please vote, encourage your neighbors to vote. And replacement ballots, I think this is going to be on our website and maybe on the live stream, but can be obtained by calling a number. I don't see anybody with a pen, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. 610-935-6170. That's to get a replacement ballot, or email restonelection@intelliscan.com. Thanks and have a great evening.